This is the first English podcast I am ever preparing for this channel. And today we're talking about why we can't speak English. Many people study English for years, but they can't speak. And why is that? Well, there are a few reasons behind this, and I'd like to talk about some of it. And then after talking about the reasons of why we can't speak English, I would like to give you some advices and some tips about how you can improve your English. The first culprit of not being able to speak English fluently is, I think, the school system. Because the language education in school systems is very traditional. So it's grammar heavy and vocabulary heavy. You learn grammar, you learn vocabulary, you fill in the blanks, you match the words, you find the mistake in the sentences, blah, blah, blah. And it's all about grammar and vocabulary, honestly. It doesn't focus on speaking at all. It doesn't give you real-life situations where you can communicate with other people. They always give you a test and you have to solve some problems. There are a lot of questions regarding grammar. Again, grammar is really helpful. Vocabulary is also really helpful. Without one another, you can't really speak a language. Vocabulary is like the bricks of a wall, and grammar is the cement that ties them together. So without the two of them, it's literally impossible to speak. But what makes it more impossible to speak is the lack of practice. And again, school systems don't really care about your speaking practice. They just give you grammar, vocabulary, reading, etc. Don't get me wrong, these skills are really important when it comes to speaking a language. But they're not enough by themselves. If we want to speak fluently, we need to practice speaking. This could be with an AI, with real people, in real life or online, or with a teacher. With a tutor. This can be with anyone, and this can be by yourself too. Have you ever tried speaking English to yourself in front of a mirror? If you haven't, I highly recommend it. Another important point is fear of making mistakes. Now, I'm going to talk about my country, Turkey. We are brought up as perfectionists in Turkey. They teach us that if you make a mistake, it's the end of life. Like, right then and there. If you make a mistake, that's it. Like, right then and there, you're eliminated. And that's one of the problems. Because when you start to speak a language, when you are a beginner in a language, it is okay and only natural to make mistakes. What's important is learning from your mistakes and correcting them. So making mistakes is your friend, actually. Rely on making mistakes, because once they are corrected in your brain, everything starts to fit together. Sometimes people are scared of their accents, for example. Like they feel like, oh, I don't have a perfect accent. How am I supposed to speak English? That's not a problem. As I say a lot in my videos, the goal of speaking a language is to communicate. It is not to be perfect. So, yeah, it is important. Accent is important because it makes the communication more clear and natural. But if your accent is in a way where your words can be understood, where what you mean is clear, then there is no problem, basically. Now I'm gonna do a Turkish accent, but I'm really bad at it, okay? A lot of people feel stupid when they make a mistake, but this isn't how it's supposed to be. You shouldn't be feeling stupid when you make a mistake because again, as I said, mistakes are your friends. We should embrace them. We should learn from them. And this is very important because as you make mistakes, you grow. Okay, let's start with the Turkish accent because I really cannot do it. Although I am Turkish, for some reason it's really hard for me to do a Turkish accent. So when I say this, when I say doing a Turkish accent is hard for me as a Turkish person, you shouldn't be scared because my situation is different than yours. I was grown up bilingual. I knew English and Turkish while growing up. So, why is my accent good? Because I literally acquired the language. I didn't learn it. We will talk about acquisition of a language and learning a language later, so this is a topic for another podcast. The third reason people always forget about is listening and speaking are two different skills. Like there is an input. Input is when you read or when you listen to a language. And output is when you produce a language, when you write something, when you say something, that is output. So usually people come to me with, oh, teacher, I can understand, but I can't speak English. So the input is good. We understand the input. Maybe sometimes perfectly, maybe sometimes 90% of the time, but we understand the input. When it comes to the output, we are stuck. We freeze. And why is this? As teachers, we always say to expose yourself to the language that you're learning. For example, if you're learning English, switch your electronic devices, languages to English. Consume English content, watch series, films, listen to podcasts, listen to songs. So this is the advice that we give. Expose yourself to English. Exposing yourself to English works very well because it improves your input. It improves how much you understand. But unless you work on output with this input, it is just improving your listening and reading skills, your comprehension skills, not more than that. So when you get an input, make sure to take notes of what you don't know and try to use them. Try to use them as much as you can. Use a phrase, use a vocabulary until it becomes natural for you. Use it daily. This is the advice that I can give you about understanding English but not being able to speak it. There's also the vocabulary situation with being able to understand but not being able to speak. There is something we call passive vocabulary and something we call active vocabulary. So passive vocabulary is when you know a word, but it's in your passive memory, meaning that you cannot use it actively, but you understand it and recognize it when you see it in a text or when you hear about it. So this is passive vocabulary. And then we have active vocabulary, which is the vocabulary that we can use when producing a language, when writing something, when saying something. Active vocabulary is the vocabulary we can confidently use. So how to make passive vocabulary into active vocabulary? It's very easy. Recognize the passive vocabulary knowledge you have, use them daily, in example sentences until it becomes natural for you, until you are not able to forget about it. Well, I am saying this is easy, but it doesn't mean it comes easy. It requires determination, consistency, and a lot of practice. Speaking of practice, I don't think people practice enough to be able to speak English well, because speaking is just like a muscle. The more you work on it, the more functional it becomes. If you don't speak daily, improvement is really hard to come with. You cannot learn speaking by only watching videos. Watch a video, then produce something about it. Write something about it, or better yet, speak about it. So I'm an English tutor on Preply. Whenever I have a trial student, I always tell them, hey, look, if you want to have lessons once a week, That's totally fine by me. But if you want to improve, if you want to really improve, doing lessons at least twice a week is mandatory. More than that is even better. Because, like, as I said, speaking is like a muscle. And if you don't work on it consistently, it can weaken. This doesn't mean take lessons from me 7 days a week. It doesn't mean that. You can take 2 to 3 or maybe 4 lessons a week with me, and then, or with any other tutor, I mean, and then study speaking every day. So how can you do this? You can talk to people online. You can find a speaking buddy. There are certain platforms for this. You can use AIs to speak to someone if you can't really do any of the things that I just talked about. Or you can talk to myself. Believe me, this is how I learned French. I learned French when I was in Galatasaray University, and it was really hard because it was a brand new language for me and I didn't know what to do. It was really difficult for me. I had 2 professors. One concentrated on grammar and vocabulary, and the other concentrated on speaking. Even though we had many classes throughout the week, and even though my professors were just amazing, it was just hard at the beginning because I didn't practice enough. Later on, I decided I would do my homework not once, but twice. And then I would speak French to myself in my daily life, to narrate my life to myself in French. This really helped me, and then I could see that I was becoming more fluent by the day. So I suggest the same to you. If you cannot find what to talk about, this website might be really helpful for you. This is not an ad. I just found this website while randomly scrolling through Instagram, and I find it really helpful. You can choose your level, you can choose the type of topic, and you can choose your language. There are some languages in the app, but not all languages. There are languages like German, English, French, Italian, Spanish, etc. So you can use this website. What I recommend is speaking to yourself for at least 5 minutes a day. Okay, let's talk about another problem, which is translating the language in your head. Many Turkish people try to think in Turkish and then translate it to English in their head. But that's not gonna work in the long run. Yes, translating is an important skill to have, especially if you're going to specialize in it. But it is not a technique that you should be using when speaking. Translating in your head results in a slow speech, panic, and freezing. Why the panic, you might ask? The panic happens because you can't say something in a language and say it in the same way in another language. Like, languages are different. There are different ways to say things. For example, I can say ateş pahası in Turkish, which means extremely expensive, but I can't say fire money. I can't say fire money in English because that wouldn't make sense. So if I want to say ateş pahası in English, and if I am trying to translate it in my head, that's not gonna work. Okay, let's talk about my advices now. As I mentioned in the video, it is mandatory to speak every single day of the week. There are, again, different methods about how you can do it. Like, you can find a tutor, you can find a teacher, you can find someone to speak to online or face-to-face. You can use AI or you can speak to yourself. Also, talking to yourself throughout the day really helps, as I said. Another advice that I can give is journaling. I give journaling homework to all my students. I tell them, hey, just write a diary about your days or about your past or what you think will happen in the future. In the diary, in the journal, you can write about anything you want to write about. I always tell my students, if you have nothing to talk about, tell me about your first love or tell me about your traumas. It really works, believe me. Also, do not be scared to form simple sentences at first. Because fluency starts with simple sentences. And as you go, you make them more complex. But again, this happens over time, not just like that. You know what I mean? I have a student of mine who thinks his English is just like a toddler English, but I completely disagree with him. Because he can express himself very well. He can use new vocabulary without difficulty. He has a good grasp of grammar. He's good at reading, listening. He understands everything that I say. So he's just not confident in himself because he wants to form more complex sentences about himself and about anything in general. But I tell him, do not be scared of yourself. Do not be shy. Do not hold yourself back. If you are going to say something in a very simple way, just say it, just say it in that way. Because as you form simple sentences, you are going to improve day by day. Also, repetition really helps. This could be repeating after your tutor or repeating after someone you're talking to, or just repeating everything you do in general. Before closing the podcast, I would like to say again that your accent, do not be scared of it. Because the goal of a language is communication, not perfection. Okay? Making mistakes is okay. Having a not perfect accent is okay. Forming simple sentences is okay. As long as you are open to improvement, as long as you realize that there is always room for improvement, you are on the right track. And I can also say that if you're afraid of speaking English, you are not alone. There are millions of other people like you who are afraid of speaking English and they are scared of making mistakes. They are scared of what people will think about their accents and etc. But the only way to speak is to start speaking. There isn't any other way. Thank you so much for watching or listening to my podcast. This was really fun to do. Thank you so much for joining me in this session. If you would like to see me talk about anything else about languages, please make sure to leave your thoughts in the comment section so I can make your wishes come true. I'm not a genie, but I can make content. Then I'll see you in the next video. See you later!